We make the familiar strange and the strange familiar. And I think that's a really good way of putting what we do in context.
Welcome to Velocitize Talks. I'm Andy North, and my guest today is Stephen Garcia, Director of Cultural Anthropology at Team One. Stephen, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Andy.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You have an interesting background. You have a master's degree in applied anthropology, and yet you've been in the marketing world, branding world for most of your career. And also your title, Director of Cultural Anthropology, is really a unique one. So tell us a little bit about your background, if you would, and about your role at Team One.
Team One is Publicis Group's full-service agency that specializes in premium aspirational brands. So there I get to head up the cultural anthropology practice, where I focus on uncovering human and cultural insights about audiences, about brands, and the products and services that they offer. And most of our clients are in the automotive, travel, hospitality, and spirits space. So what that means in practice in terms of what I do kind of day to day, I like to put it this way. There's a few different ways you can look at understanding audiences. You can look at their demographics, right? You can look at their age, their gender, their income, their life stage. Those are really individual identifiers. You can also look at their psychographics, right? You can look at their opinions on things, their attitudes, their needs and wants. These are really personal characteristics. What I really focus in on are the collective things. So culture, these are things like lived experiences, values, signs and symbols, norms, language, practices. These are all kind of the shared meanings and context that guide our day-to-day lives without us really even knowing it. And so when you think about culture is so embedded into our daily lives that it almost becomes invisible. We lose sight of the subtle yet powerful ways that it exerts influence over everything we do, from how we get dressed in the morning, how we behave as we go throughout our day, what we prioritize in our lives, and certainly the things that we spend our money on. So what I loved about anthropology is that anthropology is the perfect way to uncover this, because the methods of the discipline were really built to make the invisible visible. Really about unlocking powerful insights about people. There's an adage in the anthropology community that we make the familiar strange and the strange familiar. And I think that's a really good way of putting what we do in context.
Tell us about the global affluent study that you're part of. What was its origin, and what have been some of the most surprising things that you've learned from it?
Yeah, so like I said, the Global Affluent Tribe Study is Team One's multi-year ongoing proprietary research into the world's affluent top 10%. And it really began in 2010 against the backdrop of the global financial crisis. We were really seeking to understand post-recessionary wealth. So what our research revealed was that there was a new segment of the affluent population we then came to refer to as the Global Affluent Tribe. And they're economically powerful, they're multicultural, they're globally networked and highly influential. But even more importantly, what we discovered was that they're more united by what they love than by where they live. And in fact, we identified 5 values that they share in common. These are values like mobility, success, status, belonging, and consumption. And we found that the global incidence of these values among this audience around the world is over 70%. So that was quite shocking to us. In terms of our method, over the years, our exploration has been informed by a combination of data mining and modeling. We've done a mix of quantitative and qualitative studies, including interviews, ethnographies, semiotic analysis. And since 2015, we've fielded an annual global survey that has included up to 5,200 individuals in 15 countries. So a pretty significant amount of work has been done to get to where we are today.
Over the last year, everything has changed. The world has changed. And how has COVID and the pandemic shifted what affluence means for the Global Affluent Tribe?
So today's affluent not only believe and behave differently from the affluent of the past, they also look different. And they came into their success differently. For most of the global affluent tribes, success was not something that they inherited. They came to it by carving their own path and finding new roads for themselves. So as a result, success is something they continually define in personal ways. And rather than determining success based on external measures, these are things that like other people deem successful. They measure it based on the personal impact that they can make and the amount of happiness and fulfillment that they feel.
What does the future affluent consumer look like? What do marketers need to do to prepare for that?
Already, the millennial generation has eclipsed older generations at about 92 million in the US. And while Gen Z appears to have already developed a huge appetite for luxury, especially luxury fashion, you'll see tons of fashion shopping hauls on YouTube, right? Millennials are a bit different. They have conflicting attitudes and desires when it comes to affluence and luxury. So the oldest are about to enter their 40s. They're racially diverse, progressive in their social views. They're ambitious and entrepreneurial, and they're better educated than previous generations. But what's different is that they're also less wealthy and more indebted than previous generations were at their age. So this is a generation that was, if you remember, raised as in a world of high expectations and optimism, yet they were handed crisis after crisis that served as reality checks. So for them, luxury is not a given. It's, some will choose it, yet even those will have higher expectations about what brands need to deliver.
Is there an example that you can share from the last 10 years or so where a GAT insight drove a client strategy or a client campaign of yours?
Yeah, so I think Team One's work for the Ritz Carlton is a really great case study for how we leveraged insights about the global affluent tribe really early on in our study in order to really help the brand stand out in what was a highly competitive category. We did this by redefining the meaning of a luxury experience. And this was really based on our insights about the values of mobility and consumption and how those things had shifted. So back then, the luxury hotel category was really about sticking to old, conventional icons of wealth that really communicated this luxury experience. And these were things like white glove service, silver trays, thread counts, and pillow menus. But we knew that based on our research on the global affluent tribe, today's luxury guests crave transformational experiences and meaningful consumption. And they want opportunities for self-discovery, not just indulgence or pampering in their travels. So the way we started to think about it was, don't think about it in terms of just a 3-night stay, but rather a 3-memory stay. And then what does that really open up for us? So in a campaign called Let Us Stay With You, we really took what is a legendary service experience for the Ritz Carlton and really turned it into this aspirational message about getting your memories worth, not just your money's worth.
If there is one thing you could change about marketing, what would that be?
I think it's really important that marketers shift the thinking from short-termism to long-termism. I think one of the many things that the pandemic has shown us is that it's made pretty obvious that we're in a new era of volatility, of uncertainty, of ambiguity. And short-term thinking really creates tunnel vision, where you're only solving for today, while you may not see what's coming ahead or from the side. So building brands for the long term really means defining your purpose, defining your values, your vision, and constantly returning to those in good times and bad. And those are things that become a compass for guiding what you say, how you say it, and the actions you'll take. And I think it's really the long-term thinking that is what is going to guide your short-term decisions and lead to better outcomes.
What's the best professional advice that you've ever been given or heard?
The best advice I've ever received was to use every opportunity to pick up a new skill. And for me, that came through an experience I had when I started in advertising. I actually started in a data analyst role. And it was a need at the agency. It was something that I I didn't aspire to do. I didn't want to actually do it. And my manager at the time provided some really great advice and said, this is going to be critical for you to learn moving forward because this is kind of the future. And lo and behold, here we are with data coming out of our ears. And I think I was in that role for a very short time, but the skills I picked up during that role have lived with me. And it's something I use every day. It informs how I look at qualitative data. It informs, how I get to data, collecting that data and sorting through it. So those are skills I use every day. And even though it was something I didn't want to do, it ended up empowering what I do now.
Is there a book, a blog, or a podcast that you've recently read or listened to that you'd like to share with our audience?
A great book that came out just this year, actually, is a book called The Business of Aspiration: How Social, Cultural, and Environmental Capital Changes Brands. And this was written by Anna Angelic. She's a PhD in sociology. She's held senior strategic roles at luxury fashion brands. And now she's at Banana Republic, kind of heading up their brand strategy. I think what's really great about this book is that in it, she describes the modern aspiration economy, or what she calls the modern aspiration economy. And what that is, it's about an aspiration that is no longer anchored in accumulation or the display of possessions or experiences, but rather in things like social capital. What what you've experienced, your savviness about things, your knowledge, and your interest.
My guest today has been Stephen Garcia, Director of Cultural Anthropology at Team One. Stephen, thank you so much. This has been incredibly fascinating and interesting.
Thank you for having me.